Okay, so hopefully we have all finished our folding. If you haven't, don't worry about it. Just keep folding. But you need a minimum of 12 of these, okay? And again, we're making the Bridget's cross. And yeah, if you look it up, you can see they are traditionally made from reeds. Um, and a lot of times they're made from metal, if as jewelry or emblems that people put on their homes, which is also appropriate because Bridget, among other things, both as patron saint and as goddess, she has a thing for forges. She loved blacksmithing, metalsmithing, silversmithing, and so a lot of things are done in metal to honor her. But we're making out of paper today for a couple reasons. One, I love some upcycling. I love things to be kind to the earth, but also because I love the potential of what a magazine page might speak to you. You look at the page, you think one thing. You fold it, cut it, rip it, glue it, whatever, and all of a sudden it's taken on a new story for you. And so that's part of what we're doing here today. That is what creative depth work is. So we're going to begin, and Bethany and I are going to talk a little bit about Bridget. So I'm going to show you what we're doing, and then we're going to get started. So you're going to take your first one, and you're going to fold it in half, end to end, crease that middle crease. If you want to pre-fold all of your pieces in half, if that's easier for you, feel free to do that. But I'm going to show you here. Okay, I'm going to kind of slide it through like thread through a needle. Then, so you've got it here, kind of, you've got your vertical in front of you. You've got the other one kind of going out to your right hand. But then you're going to rotate it away from the arm that you just put on. So I just put on this side. I'm going to rotate it so it's the top one. Mm-hmm. Instead of threading the next piece through like you did the first time, you're going to take the next piece and pinch it around. So open it up and put the previous piece in it, going in the opposite direction.
Amy's has neater edges than mine, so if you're looking at mine are not as perfect and neat.
Which is fine.
Yes.
And actually, it's going to look loose and wonky while we're in the process of making it, but then we'll be able to get it all neat at the end, okay? And we can, at the end, we can glue some things down and kind of make it more secure if that is something we want to do. So the third side, slide it through. Okay, by now you see the beginning of a square in the center. Yeah. And this is a form of a cross or religious emblem that is different from the normal ones because it has these 4 points, which you're going to see as we continue making it. So you just keep doing that, keep going around until you've done all of your pieces. And then when we are getting to the end, I will kind of explain what we're doing next. So Bethany is actually the one who introduced me to Bridget. She introduced me to her because she knows I love myself a medieval sister. I don't know if you know any of them, but there's a lot of them who were amazing, like amazing women at a time when women weren't given much recognition. I mean, these women were committed not only to their faith and their religion, but committed to their communities, committed to making an impact on a world that was pretty rough on a lot of people. There were a lot of have-nots. And These women were innovative and strong, resourceful, nurturing. They were intrepid. Like they didn't take no for an answer. You're going to see that in Bridget. They're creative. They were educated when women weren't educated, and they turned around and educated other women. They were industrious and they were respected by men, by powerful men, even, which was unheard of because they were women and women weren't really valued in that time. So they were such fierce females, and Bridget is one of them. So when Bethany introduced me, I was all in because I love myself a medieval sister.
Yeah, it's such a nice contrast to a lot of the masculine space and masculine values that dominate our culture. And when you think about some of the favorite stories in your ancestry or your family line or that you've fallen in love with, there typically is a feminine energy that you get drawn to, feminine correspondences. We want to talk to you about a couple or those of Bridget, not just a couple, but the ones that stood out about Bridget. And remember, this is Bridget in both the saint form and the goddess form. And for my people who don't love either of those, these are some feminine traits that we wanted to lift up, to exonerate, to embody, and to celebrate. So she was born, here's some facts about her. And these have been transcribed through the ages. I need to quit working on my cross because I can't do both. Sorry. These have been
I'm
told
with
through
you.
the ages, and we found them in doing the research and putting our intentions into today. We found them in lots of places. So we pulled the ones that were consistent. She was born with even less than most because she was born into slavery. Her father was a wealthy chieftain who sold her and her mother because that's how old Bridget is. Women, remember, were chattel. They were not beings. He sold her mother and Bridget, who was already his slave. Later, due to some of the uncanny ability with dairy work, Bridget was able to be freed. She
That
worked,
uncanny ability is she could make milk just appear. When she was a baby and she was hungry, this cow would just give her milk and it would come. And it was good milk to the point that the dairy owner who owned her like wanted her to work for his dairy.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's going to come in later when Amy was hinting earlier at fur babies. The milking and her ability with cattle and sheep are really going to play a piece later too. And they play a piece in this season when the sheep get their first milking this year. So, like Amy said, she was really good with dairy work. So she was able to be freed. And she continued to work at that dairy for her slave owner until she could free her mother. And during this time, she was continuously giving out the produce and other things away to the poor and earning some money for him as well. After she freed herself and her mother, she went back to her father, the original chieftain who sold her into slavery in the first place. She worked alongside him and helped him become more prosperous, which was interesting. This is a trait that not all of us are going to have, where we go back to the one who wounded us to begin with, and make amends and decide to partner with them. And she did that with her father. She worked alongside him and helped him become more prosperous. But she would not relent and marry despite multiple attempts and great pressure. Supposedly, she backed up a marriage proposal refusal with continued refusal and prayed that she wouldn't be beautiful anymore. And the legend goes that she lost an eye in the covenant. Um, and when I'm sorry, she lost an eye, so she became ugly. And then when she went into the covenant, when she went into a monastery, it was restored.
Gotta love that commitment. Like she knew what she wanted out of life and she was willing to go to great lengths to get it.
And she went against the culture for it, which I think is amazing.
Yeah. And
She held her convictions.
yeah, she held her convictions. And yes, not everyone can return to the place where they were wounded and um, and work alongside and partner with. Um, but for those who can, there is a graciousness
Mm,
to it. And Bridget had that big souled quality that she was able to do. Um, but it went beyond her wealthy father, who maybe you could say she was placating him for resources, but she did it for
mm,
everyone. She was that gracious. Um,
generous.
and it
Yeah.
said that she even invented this cross. Did you tell this story already, Bethany?
No,
She
no.
invented this cross um, when she went back to her father on his deathbed um, or sick bed while while she was sitting there listening to him and talking to him, she kept her hands busy, and she picked up some reeds that were on the floor, and she began to weave them, and she made this cross. Um, And I can imagine, having been in some difficult conversation spaces, that
Mm,
keeping her hands busy helped her heart um, stay clear and not get caught up in kind of the emotional gauntlet of trying to be in a space and remain kind and loving to someone who is hurtful. And so I find that really beautiful that she did that.
and she
Um,
didn't lose herself in the space of
mhm,
being kind and
mhm,
generous and giving grace. And I think that's really key. One of the things that I get from Bridget is that she can be these things, but self is always intact and protected in meaningful ways.
mhm. And it was a self so that she could then turn and honor the intact being of those around her. It
Hmm.
wasn't a self just to um, keep to herself. It was she sought healing in order to heal. She
Mm,
sought um, surety and open heartedness in order to promote
mm,
confidence and a willingness to hear intuition in those around her.
mm,
And regardless of rank or status, I mean, everyone came to
mhm.
her. She became a bishop. In fact, one of the things I read, the saint version of Bridget became a bishop. The goddess, obviously, she had a huge domain and was well respected because of who she was. But the saint, this is fact, a person named Bridget who was a sister in Ireland
Yeah,
became a bishop.
a bishop. In
A bishop.
490 BC or
Yeah.
490,
Yeah.
yeah,
And what I read said
AD,
that no woman in the Catholic Church had such, or
ever.
any Christian religion had any influence to rival her for another 1,000 years at least.
Yeah.
At least. Maybe none to this day. So like it didn't matter though who you were. Like she reached the pinnacle. Um, and yet every time she was open to those who came to her,
Hmm.
regardless of whether they were powerful or not, whether they were hungry or not, whether they um, believed in what she believed or not. They
Yeah.
came and she responded, and they left changed
Yeah.
and just
Imagine
changed by her presence.
imagine being able to hold power and not wound. or manipulate or hurt with that. What a beautiful way to embody the power that she had and to choose to heal, not hurt with it. I love that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And welcome all.
Yeah, and that sense of her true north, of being
Mm,
able to follow what she knew was good and right and true, um, is yeah, it's one of my favorite things about her. And funny enough, you're gonna see in the cross there is a hint of that. There's a couple hints of that. So when we finish this, I'm gonna point those things out to you. Like it's a silly little craft, and yet it contains multitudes, as we like to say about some of our favorite ladies. Um, so yeah, so her true north, like, can you imagine um,
the stars.
what the stars look like
Uh,
back then?
yeah, yeah. No light
I can
pollution.
see three out of my window. But the moon is very pretty tonight. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, light was a commodity back then. So she began to be the fire keeper. A lot of people when they go to Ireland to Kildare and other places, Lagrange, other places for her well, you also know that there was a temple and she kept light there, fire, an oil lamp. And she's associated with keeping the flame of life tended. A lot of people seek her out when your heart light has dimmed, when it's barely there's ashes and you gotta really tend to it and get it flaming again. She's the keeper and the tender of the heart, the flame of life, the one that mothers maintain toward the harsh winter. So if you think about living off of flame, it was in the hearth so that you could eat, so that you could stay warm. We're talking about at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy shelter, safety, warmth, food. She was central to that, um, and protector of those things. It was so often a time of bleak and waning hope for those reliant on what nature will provide as they watch supplies dwindle and hear the winter wind howling. We're talking about the dark of night and the season that we're in, the season just before spring. It's not the longest night, it's not the darkest night, that's in December. We're at that midpoint today, Bridget's Day, in between the longest night and the spring. And it's an interesting time. It's still winter. The light is coming, but it's still a dark night. And in this day of her celebration, known both as Imbolc, Imbolc, as in cat, and St. Bridget's Day in Ireland. And in the Catholic Church, they turned Imbolc into Candlemas, and it is the blessing of seeds, it is the blessing of candles. Everybody will bring their candles into the church and have them blessed. So, for those who make beeswax candles or candles at home, or for those who garden, this is the time of year that you bless your seeds. You set intentions of what you're going to plant and bloom and tend to yourself. Those have both been integrated into current day. It is the halfway point today, like I was saying, between winter and spring, and they believed that goddess Bridget collected the kindling of the fires to get her to the spring of regeneration. The space
Sure.
between here and there, now and not yet, darkness and illumination. I think it's interesting that I'm in light and Ames in dark. I kind of like that we're holding that
We
literally
planned it
right
that
now.
way.
That's great.
Not really, but it is kind of fun. And as someone who lives quite north in the northern hemisphere, um, this time of year can still be very dark. And not just because it is night here, but the days are still very short. And where I live, they're gray. And so they feel even shorter a lot
Mm,
of the time. And actually, at least in modern time, when we have kind of a festive holiday season coming to the end of December and into the new year, the shortest days don't feel as long sometimes as right now
Mhm.
when you're well, I'm kind of over winter. I'm ready, like the snow and the bare branches and the beautiful quietness of winter. Like, okay, I'm done with it. I'm tired, I'm wet, I'm cold. Can we have some light? Can we have something growing? And so
Mm.
just having someone that kind of comes to be in this place, in this in between place, in this gray, unknowing place, um,
Mhm.
is a really powerful symbol, a really powerful story to hold on to. But we could go on and on about Bridget, but I think
Totally.
you probably, and we will go on a little bit longer, but not yet, because I think you've probably all gotten to a point where you have put the last of your reeds in your cross. And so
Mhm.
I'm going to show you now how we're going to kind of lock it in place. So I've just put this last one here, and I'm going to take the ends through one of the loops. So I'll show you that again, but it kind of just knocks everything in place where it's not going to move quite as easily. Um, so So I'll take that out. So this is my last tab. I'm going to put it around my wreath on that side. And then I've pulled out kind of one of the earlier tabs so that it creates like the eye of a needle here almost. And
Mhm.
I'm going to thread it through that eye. And then I'm just going to seal everything back tight and in place. Line up those wreaths side by side. Now, and this is where, if you want, you can go around and clean up any loose edges by gluing them down to help them be more stabilized. Bridget's cross
Mhm.
is often tied off at the ends, like sheaves of wheat almost. Um, but I liked it for a number of reasons, which I'll quickly, which we'll quickly talk about. Um, but for now, actually, I'll quickly tell you right now. A couple of the things. One, it's called a cross, but many people say you should hang it at a diagonal. Um, and the reason for that is when you look at it at a diagonal, that center might look like something familiar we see in the night sky. Ursa Major, the the big bear.
Mhm.
Um, and in Ursa Major is the Big Dipper. And with the Big Dipper, it, we use it to find the North
The
Star.
north. Yeah.
So again, there is Bridget with that pointing to true north. Um, but if you do it more vertical, horizontal instead of diagonal, you have a bit of a compass happening. You have that north, south, east, west navigation that this can represent. So there's that sense of being in a place of unknowing, being in a place that's gray and maybe you've lost your way a bit. Um, the spirit of Bridget is something that can kind of come and remind you that you can find your way, that you will find your way.
Yeah, I
And
love.
yeah, and then the last thing this is either a star or a sun. Um, but because it has four, it kind of invites us to turn it. So a sun, as if it reminds us of the wheel turning, the year
Mhm.
turning, time moving forward, the four seasons. Um, and in the Celtic calendar, These were representative of the four seasons that were four holy days.
And I was just looking at the symbol for the number 4, and it says it's a grounded, stable number that evokes feelings of calmness and solidity. 4 is very much rooted in the physical world, and being present in now. There are 4 seasons, 4 elements, 4 corners of earth. 4 is about building a strong foundation and developing a down to earth perspective. So I kind of like
Mhm.
the 4 in there. It's a very stable number. And
Yeah.
I've seen them hung when I was in Kildare and over in Ireland. I picked up a stained glass version and I have it hung like a mezuzah for protection. And I saw
Ah,
that all over, especially in Kildare where her well is and where her monastery is still. They're hung like mezuzahs to protect the entry or to protect the home. So it's kind of
yeah.
cool. That's why you see them in metal stained glass, to make them
Mm.
sustainable to the elements for protection. Often do a blessing of the barnyard animals and the animals this time of year too. So everyone brings them. I don't know if anybody's seen any of the British shows, but they have some funny ones of the animals lined up outside of the little churchyard and they're blessing them. It's really cute. For St. Bridget's Day or for Candlemas.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
That's really cute. But this is traditionally the day that kind of started the spring planting season.
Mhm.
Um, so it was a significant day in the calendar, and
The
so
ewes
kind of
would get their milk by now,
mhm,
and so they knew
mhm.
that they could survive if it were a
There's
longer
that dairy
winter.
loving
There's that dairy loving
Bridget.
symbol. Yep.
Yeah. If
Yeah,
you get up
ewes.
and take a snack break, get some cheese or some butter or some
Right.
clotted cream with a scone and jam.
And
That
that'll
sounds
come in
lovely.
later because we are giving you a handout, for deepening this process, deepening your connection with Bridget, deepening your experience this time of year of making a homemade milk bath. So you'll be getting a
Oh,
handout from us, in the email where we send you this video, and you can look forward to that. It's a really great recipe, and if it was good enough for Cleopatra and Bridget, honey, it's gonna be good enough for you.
that is right. So, yeah, so this is where we're going to leave off with the cross, but now that you know how to make it, if you didn't use all of your reeds, you can go ahead and make another one. I do not recommend using fewer than three per side.
Mm,
I like the 12 because it seems fitting for the year and the seasons, and I thought that was kind of cool. You can do it bigger. I did my first one with four on each side, and I haven't tried bigger, but I think it could be fun to try and just see how big you can make that. Because what will happen is this center part will grow. And the other thing is spend some time looking at the synchronicity of where your images ended up. So I have this woman's face. I was drawn to this woman. She was an older woman who was looking up at the sunshine. So she had these sunglasses on. And then I don't even know what this middle image was, but the way they lined up just really spoke to me about seeing, about not knowing what's coming.
mm,
Um, and
mhm,
I found it really fascinating. And then the other part I loved was there is this like embroidered sun that's almost dead center. Um, Again, that kind of echoes this idea of light, of the
mm,
light coming. And
mm.
so you don't have to make it a big, huge thing, but it is something that maybe keep it on hand for a few days, a few weeks, and just pull it out and see. Do the colors begin to stir something in you? Do the images or the words?
And
Yeah.
do you remember us talking too, if they also want to do a deepening experience and have this symbol with them, especially if there's 12, they could write a value for each month. Let's
Hmm.
say that they wanted to be in, illumination, and you could journal about it. You could work with
Mm,
whatever word or energy or value that you want to put. And that way, each year you could have 2025. Next year, you could make a new one and you could be
yeah,
practicing. And it's just a way to embody and build a practice or ritual, which we really need in today's times as we quiet the mind and develop the heart. We want to begin to embody and carry over these practices. And it's just one way that creativity, that art can speak into it, because journaling, writing, meditating, those are all forms of art. We invite
yeah,
you to deepen your experience with Bridget's Cross. If you want to write a value or a word or something that you want to practice, Amy had held up the one that had the three and ended up being the 12. So if you wanted to do that for the 12 calendar months, we invite you to
yeah.
do that as well.
As we wrap up this time spent with making Bridget's Cross, let us take a few moments to look at what we have made and see what it might be speaking to you. Perhaps it's speaking to you of Bridget, or even more, perhaps something of Bridget is speaking to you about you and the new and deeper story that might be unfolding for you. And then we will begin.